I'm a bird, mother. I'm a bird.
Angry gamers try to review bomb Baldur's Gate 3, and it fails miserably. I checked today, and there's a lot of positive reviews from today.
Yeah.
So the Baldur's Gate rating on Steam is still overwhelmingly positive.
Ah, okay. I feel like they have too much, a lot of people loving the game that's not gonna affect them at all, unless they get like review bombed. But even then, I
They
don't
did
think.
get review bombed.
I mean, they're still there. They're still overwhelmingly positive.
Yeah.
So is it enough? I guess it wasn't enough.
Baldur's Gate 3 has found itself in hot waters recently because of some recent and, might I even say, dumb drama. To boil it down for you, the Larian boss man himself, Sven Vincke, you know, the man who needs to be protected at all costs, recently held a speech at the Game Awards 2024.
Like, genuinely, Sven is a sweetheart. And he did make sure in his speech not to single out anyone, but he did throw down some facts that you actually need to put in time and effort into the product while respecting your work and respecting your customers.
During which he openly criticized the gaming industry while also putting a spotlight on future winners, explaining why he'll always know who the winner is in that particular year. Saying that, and I paraphrase, it's stupidly simple, but somehow it keeps on getting lost. The studio made their game because they wanted to make a game that they wanted to play themselves. They didn't make it to increase market shares. They didn't make it to serve a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets. Furthermore, the people in charge forbade them from cramming the game with anything whose only purpose was to increase revenue and don't serve the game design. They didn't treat.
So he straight up said, look at the actual product. And I know there's a lot of people like in the comments on the previous Game Awards video that we did mentioning that it's only 10% of like audience votes that was even counted.
Yeah, which is not how you do these Game Awards, in my opinion.
Then what's the point of having it? What's the point of people even voting then?
Treat their developers like numbers on a spreadsheet. Now, if you watch the entirety of the speech yourself, I've provided a link in the comment section if you want to check it out, you, being a reasonable person, I hope, would most likely see that Sven's speech is a good thing. As he said,
I don't know what just happened.
What happened?
The video just went whoop. I don't know about that one, Chief.
Censor.
essentially spoke loud and clear for the sake of all us gamers out there, what the industry has suffered from for so long and what needs to change. However, some people took the wrong lesson from Sven because, of course, and as such, right after the Game Awards concluded, Baldur's Gate 3's Steam page was getting flooded with bad reviews.
Yep.
Specifically, it would seem by Chinese players, and apparently Black Myth Wukong fans. But what really happened here? Well, by checking out some of the reviews, it would seem that many fans of Black Myth were upset by Sven Vincke's speech. And if we take a look at the reviews on December 13th, you can see an obvious negative spike in the reviews that day. Now, as I don't know Chinese myself, I had to use Google Translate to see what these players are saying, with the first review to pop up saying this. At first, I didn't comment on the evil line, which I think is Baldur's Gate 3, halfway through, because I wanted to support it with sales and word of mouth. Now, Laula thinks word of mouth and sales are not important, so I also have my own opinion. I want to leave a negative review for the urban area in Chapter 3 in the evil line, which again I think is Baldur's Gate 3. I'll update the review after I complete the plot. Now, I'll go ahead and assume that Laula means Larian, in which case this person is entirely incorrect in their statement because everyone who's a fan of Larian and Baldur's Gate 3 know that they truly value word of mouth. And Sven didn't say anything about
None of this even worked. Baldur's Gate 3 is still overwhelmingly positive on Steam.
Yeah, I feel like they're the people who are apparently like Black Myth Wukong fans, like review bombing Baldur's Gate 3, which is, it doesn't make sense. I feel like that's the wrong kind of thing you should be doing. He was kind of speaking out for, I'm just allegedly speaking out for Black Myth Wukong and other games that were elected. So I don't know why they're attacking him. There might be some deeper connotations there, but hey.
About word of mouth and sales not being important. He was specifically talking to publishers about sales targets. However, it turns out that the issue here is twofold. On one hand, Chinese translation during the Game Awards essentially said what this person thinks that Sven said, that Larian doesn't value word of mouth, which was entirely incorrect. What Sven was saying is that studios and publishers that prioritize their devs instead of chasing quarterly profits will always be ahead, because...
Okay, so basically what happened? Wrong translation was provided.
Again.
Same reason why game science was in hot water in the first place.
They can't catch a break with this.
Happy devs tends to make good games, which translates into happy gamers. He never criticized Black Myth Wukong. Now, as I can assume that some comments will say down below, Astro Bot winning supposedly flies in the face of what Sven had just said. As to some people, Astro Bot seemingly represents everything wrong about Sony, being loaded with the legacy characters and nostalgia just to increase overall revenue. However, anyone who's actually played Astro Bot would know that it's a good game. Yes, it's a fairly simplistic game, but it's still incredibly enjoyable. And personally speaking, as a massive Super Mario fan, Astro Bot is the best platformer I've played since Mario Galaxy. Now maybe you agree, maybe you don't. Fact of the matter is that Team Asobi were the ones who made Astro Bot, not Sony. So even if you do view Sony in a critical light, like I do, you should still be able to separate them from the studio that actually made the game.
And I never said like the game is bad. But the fact remains, you have like, what, 19 hours of playtime with this? It's just a simple platformer. It's fun, don't get me wrong, it's a good game. But I would never put a game like this as the game of the year. And if anything, we already saw what the voting award went to. And on top of that, you add the whole that only 10% of the votes goes to the game of the year. It just, all of this is just so messy. All they did is create a lot of divide who enjoys Wukong and who enjoys Astro Bot.
I think so too.
Now, the user Kend7510 on the official BG3 subreddit added a few other examples with added translation. Sales not important? Then player review must not be important either. Take this negative review. Game of the year doesn't have to meet sales targets? I'll never buy Larian games again. He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he hereby becomes a monster. I spent money and I'm pissed off, so I'm giving a negative review. Worse than Astro Bot, just a garbage game with good sales.
What?
Okay.
Now it would seem
That doesn't really make sense.
No, it honestly doesn't make sense.
that there's a good mix of players who misunderstood what Sven said, and then fans of Black Myth Wukong that are simply angry that their game didn't win Game of the Year. Again, I mentioned this previously, I played Black Myth Wukong and I think it's a good game, but going so far as to call both Baldur's Gate 3 and Astro Bot garbage games is just laughable and childish, and I absolutely don't trust that some of these commenters actually played either games. All this said, it turns out that this little attempt at sabotage was just a blip on the radar, as the overwhelming majority of reviews are, well, overwhelmingly positive, and said review bomb just didn't go very far at all. Some more good news to add though is that a lot of Chinese players came out in defense against these commenters, one saying, "A good game, a good production attitude, and a good team should not receive bad reviews because of disputes between other games." Another one says, "The game is very fun, don't be led astray by the extreme groups." And another, "I would like to add a positive review and remind those who left negative reviews to search for the original English text and read it for yourself, and then think about Larian's attitude towards the player community before and after release, as well as the dedication of 7 large patches, soon to be 8, and 30 small patches. Don't let impulse dominate your actions."
Well, to be fair, I don't even think that the people who left negative reviews should even be blamed. I think if we learned anything this year, it's the whoever people are hiring for translation.
Yeah, these translators need to brush up on a lot of things right now.
And I don't think they should be losing their jobs or anything, but in their office for the company they're working for, they should be at least held accountable for what they're doing.
Now these are only a few of the positive reviews that came out in defense of Larian, showing not just how big the overall fanbase has become for BG3 and Larian, but just how big of a fanbase Larian has over in China. I also want to leave off that these types of occurrences does nothing but harm, and in this case in particular towards Chinese people. When you do stuff like review bomb because your country's game didn't win an award, you do nothing but bring negativity towards your country and towards your people.
Yeah.
Now, I choose to believe that most Chinese players are reasonable, as evident of the positive counter reviews, but I still wish more people would just stop to think for a moment before...
At least it shows it was like, what, maximum 500 people leaving negative reviews out of like thousands. Like, I'm just assuming. It still does bother me, like, how easily people were, like, to get up in arms to bomb them with bad reviews.
Yeah.
Like, they've seen it happen before because of mistranslation.
Reviews, but I still wish more people would just stop to think for a moment before acting on their impulses, because this has just been really sad to see. And this behavior is not unique to China. It has unfortunately spread across the entire globe. But to all of you reasonable Chinese BG3 fans out there, thank you for thinking for yourself and for standing up for this studio and this game, because Larian and Sven Vincke has to be protected at all costs. Anyway, leave those comments down.
He's definitely one of the few good CEOs.
Yeah, he is one of the better CEOs, and I feel like the anger towards him is so misdirected.
Yeah, when we mean like CEO, we mean like the gaming sphere, of course.
How about, you know, maybe directing the anger who actually did the whole mistranslation on game science, and the people who continued pushing it after it was resolved.
They should be mad at those people, to be honest.